Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden, and this is the EVE Universe Show's continued coverage of the CSM 17, this time with Vincent, which is as far as I'm getting into your name. How's it going, Vincent?
Good. Great to be here again.
Yeah.
That you take the time.
Spoilers. No, you came by last year at about this time to chat. I think I asked this then, and I'll ask it that now. How do you pronounce your full name?
When I created this name, I probably didn't think about that too much. It should be something like Winzentowitsch Madeveda. And I think the only Eve person besides Germans I've heard it pronounced correctly was Ashy from Ashy in Space, I think.
She's really cool.
Yeah.
But
she also has some German experience. So.
That's fair. Well, the thing is that like that's got to be effective for like not being primary, right? Because if anybody calls out your name, it's like, well, this is why I say like WIN instead. But either way, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about your candidacy for CSM 17. Your post is called Booster Producer, Smuggler, and Wormholer, which kind of zeroes it in. Let's, I guess, take those in out of order. Let's begin with the Wormholer thing, because Wormholer, I think, is probably one of the terms, the concepts that people are most like keyed in on in the when it comes to CSM elections. There's always discussions about whether or not we're going to get a Wormholer candidate in, how it's important to get a Wormholer candidate in, which Wormholer candidate is going to get in. Last year, there was a strong contention amongst Wormhole candidates, and in the end, none of them got in. So, with that in mind, why don't we talk about your experience as a wormholer and why you feel like you could represent that population?
I mean, first of all, the whole wormholes and CSM thing has been something filled with so much drama and
it has
people
a story
joining
history.
notebooks. yeah, like all the content that went out of there is just it's amazing what all happened, and kind of I'm not sure why they are why there have been so many I'm not sure how to say it, but like why there has been this animosity towards voted in representatives, and them being blamed for making the wrong decisions and ruining the game, when usually the CSM are told that they can't do anything at all. So it's kind of always the switch between, oh no, you're in, you are responsible for all the bad things, but also you're not responsible for the good things because CSM can't do shit. Like all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's so I kind of don't get this duality.
Yeah, it's the whole like is the CSM effective thing is just that's a rant by itself. But so a little bit of history then. Like years ago, the wormholers used to basically run their own primary, so that way they could like unify behind one guy. And then was it Noob Man? And then Izuki happened, and those two, 1-2 punches basically broke up the faith of like wormholers to rally together. Meanwhile, wormholes over time has shifted more and more and more towards large groups dominating huge sections of wormhole space, as opposed to lots and lots of little groups. So this has led to high amounts of factioning, which I think has led to kind of what we saw last year when it came to wormholes. However, in spite of all of that, we get a reversal of surgical strike. We get the filaments taken out of wormholes. We get several of the biggest things that like the wormhole candidates were asking for last year. So I guess my first question for you is, do we need a wormhole candidate? It seems like wormholers got what they needed.
I mean, that's a good question, and something I don't really know how that happened. I think one explanation is that the community team from CCP really they were in all the streams that I knew of with wormholes in them, apart maybe from Bonus Wave, which is a little bit very specific. But yeah, they were following us. They were following our campaigns very closely. Maybe they brought it up more. That would be one thing. Maybe just the other people in CSM brought that up because they kind of saw these, like I was part of those rounds of wormholes talking about and discussing and coming out at a consensus. maybe people just ran with it and brought that forth. I know that some people in CSM also have been contacted by wormholders about what they think should happen. What exactly happened there, I've got no idea.
Right. Well,
But yeah, I think for me, it's running itself is already an important step. Like bringing it out there and discussing it publicly.
right. I mean, it's very easy to argue that, like I said, I interviewed I think all 5 of the Wormhole candidates last year. And so one of the things
there might have been more.
There might have been more. The big ones. I thought there was either way, whatever. The point that I got out of it was there were a few things that basically everyone agreed on. The surgical strike thing, the filament thing. And so, yeah, I mean, like, if CCP watched those things, even if a wormholer doesn't get elected, it's like the third-party candidate effect, in like normal elections where you may not get elected, but you set the tone for the discussion. Everybody now has to deal with your points. So in that same sort of way, like, these interviews are a way of putting forward your agenda, even if you don't make it onto the CSM. And then when all of the wormhole candidates all say the same thing, then CCP know what to do. So to that end, last year, I was told that surgical strike was breaking everything and filaments in wormholes were breaking everything. Those 2 are fixed. So everything's fine now, right?
I mean,
right?
Those are big topics, definitely. Like, for me, when I came back into the game and I was told about filaments and how they could be misused during an eviction, I was very pissed. Like, I didn't like it at all. Like, what the hell is this? I can just go away and, I'm gone. Haha, can't shoot me now. That was like a big thing. And
actually, let me explain this real quick because I already see questions in chat about it. So effectively, the poachfin filaments and the null-sec signal and noise filaments used to be able to be used in wormholes. And while you can't do that with a combat timer, you can do it while doing PvE. And so ships would be running sites or whatever, and if they got evicted or if somebody came in to kill them, they would just quickly use a filament and they would get all their stuff out. And then they would just have to figure out how to extract it out of poachfin or null, which is a totally much more reasonable request.
Yeah.
Without
most of the times directly high sec, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Which now, because of that, evictions are full on if you can maintain hold control, they can't really get their stuff out anymore. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, because and it was for both attackers and defenders. Because once the hole is closed down and one of the sides can hold it down, the other side can't just get stuff out. That does count for attackers who are just like, okay, I've brought all my Belingi ships into this hole, I'm gonna start evicting them, and then, oh no, there's too much resistance, they brought too much people, we're just gonna filament out.
I'm not trapped in here with you.
Yeah, and I found that to be almost more against the wormhole idea than the part of the defenders, where they could obviously just use that to throw out people or orcas or everything, just pack ships full of them, pack full of stuff and bring them out. With frig holes, which is one of the one of the things wormholes also talked about that we didn't get anything iterated on. You could actually just with every ship you had, you could just throw it out, as you could always get a shuttle in or an interceptor. So yeah, there was just too much things that could be misused for and break up the inherent mechanics of wormhole space. So they just had to go. And I think in the end, when we got the change, it was, I'm not sure where it was said, but yeah, that it was said by CCP that this really probably should have never been implemented, as it was very obvious.
Yeah. Ultimately, the things like the fact that filaments can be used in poachfin or in wormhole space was one of those things that, like, nobody intended it to be like a huge impactful thing. No, it was, it wasn't like somebody thought it up on put it on their design board. It was more of an unfortunate consequence because, if something doesn't stand out as something that requires dealing with, then why do it, right? We're just going to be implementing the filaments and see what happens. And unfortunately, wormhole space ends up being the collateral damage of a lot of changes. This is like one of the defining features of wormhole space, which is why they've always been very strong on having a candidate or wanting to have a candidate, because a lot of things impact wormhole space in ways that other people don't necessarily foresee. You know, like the way that they roll holes, or the way that, you know, like mechanics.
Basically, mass isn't really that relevant outside of wormholes.
Right. Yeah. So like the Higgs, when they changed the Higgs, not the Higgs, but the Hick, to make it so that it changed the mass thing, like that actually screwed up wormholes, and so they had to like give them a special object for that. So, you know, having somebody on the CSM that's there early, that's able to go like, hey, that's going to do this, would be extremely valuable.
Yeah.
Why you?
So just circling on that question back, that this is basically why we want a wormholer in a CSM, to exactly having instantly the possibility to say, don't you see how this would be stupid? Don't you see how this would break everything, and so on? And also, I think the recent example would be the timers, which are kind of a yes or no question, depending on who you ask. Some people were like, yeah, we can finally trash all the structures. It's going to be the summer of evictions, and it's going to be fun, while other people were kind of concerned that starting corps wouldn't really be able to defend those anymore, to afford larger citadels, or just to be
Let's jump on that.
Have the entry.
Let's jump on that. So it was very obvious to me that medium structures were redone to make them closer to posses, right? Having 2 timers, even the fact that wormholes give you a day and a half, that's just the maximum stront timer for a structure. So, like, it just seemed very obvious to me that it was modeled off of posses. People lived in wormholes in posses for years, and they just put up with it, right? Like, if you got evicted in 48 hours, fucking suck it up, buttercup. That's the way that wormholes work. If all your shit gets stolen or blown up or whatever, everything's ephemeral in wormholes. Has structures made wormholers too soft, and that's why they're complaining about it? Or is there something else that has fundamentally changed that make it so that these medium structure changes are somehow so detrimental to people living in wormholes? People lived in wormholes with posses.
I think the medium structures are kind of a no deal for the bigger groups. Like the groups that are able to exist because you don't have to rely on the trust of posses anymore. Those big groups don't really care about this change. They may have some Raitaru set up, but that would be the only thing they would have to worry about. They can definitely spend the money on large structures and don't have the problem, just literally don't care about it and continue as usual, and it would only really hit the smaller corps or maybe farmholds from someone. But yeah, it made it easier, but I think it was before the changes, it was more like, wow, I can't believe we're managing to live in here, which was also the intention from CCP, that they didn't really think anyone would live in there.
That's right.
To kind of still manage to do it. To something, well, we can still live in here with still the threat that after 3 days or something, everything I had is now in the hands of someone else.
Right. I guess that's my point, is that the complaints that I've been hearing from wormholers about this structure change seem to be the exact things that kind of define wormhole space, right? The fact that your things are ephemeral, the fact that things can go wrong very, very quickly, the fact that nothing that's in your wormhole space is going to be yours forever. That like this is just your kind of extension, and eventually it will burn. Like, these are understood concepts in the before days, but now structures have allowed you to have a bit more of a consistency, and things like filaments and all these other things have kind of created this expectation of longevity or comfort within wormholes. Do you think that the problem is the structure changes, or do you think that the problem is the change in assumptions and expectations from wormhole space that has been created over the last several years?
I think the problem that came with the medium timers, I don't think that the structures are a problem at all in itself. I think that the discussion about medium timers, because I'm not really on either side completely. I'm still kind of thinking about it myself and wouldn't be able to decide on if that should be completed reverted completely. I think right now it's in a good place, that it's not that short, and there's one timer less. So yeah, the thing is with the change is that it differentiates between having the large structure and the medium structure, which would usually mean being a high class corp and a low class corp, because a low class corp doesn't really have to set up a large structure, as they don't have you normally wouldn't have any capitals to dock there, and thus just not need them, and also then have a much lower cost, which would mean maybe that more groups could get into wormhole space. Now, with this change that was at the start, would mean that after 2 days where you didn't log in, all your stuff would be gone.
Could be.
And the alternative to that would be to invest much more money into a large structure, which would then also mean you might be a bigger eviction target, because you show that you can actually scrounge up that much is.
Oh, you absolutely are a larger eviction target. Absolutely. I mean, like, the core is worth more. And like you said, they're going to assume that you have capitals. You know, they're going to assume that you have higher level industry. It's always been this is one of the things that always freaked me out, is because, like, prior to this change, the wisdom was to avoid putting large structures. Like, having any structures at all is one level of broadcasting yourself out there and attracting attention. But having a large structure is like a whole nother level of attracting bad attention already. So now your bare minimum is the thing that people want to hunt down to go and blow up.
Yeah. Because even then you say, okay, then this new group, they they should just get a large structure, everything's fine, but that's really not it. Yeah, and I think this is the with the numbers we have that are already small in the wormhole space, it's really a concern about the newer players, the smaller groups that want to get a foothold, and not really about, oh no, it's going the opposite way again. We're gonna have the pause timers, and we're not gonna get to defend for many more days than just the 15-hour timer.
Right. So to split this into 3 different problems, I kind of am interested as to which of these components is more pressing to you, or more importantly, like the thing that CCP or could be drilled on to fix this problem the easiest. We have 3 different kind of things that are all conflated together. 1, structures now have 2 timers, or sorry, 1 timer, which means you basically have only 1 go to protect it. Once you know, you get to mount your defense, and so that 24 or that 48 hours or whatever is the time that you have to make your bring in allies, do your, deal with stuff, get ready to go. Now, I've always said that wormholes is one of those things that, like, when the time comes, you're either ready or you're not. You need to be already ready at the time. If you're not ready, then you're just going to be caught out of guard. But at the same time, having only 1 chance to do it, I can watch my armor timer and see if that succeeds or fails and what they bring to make a determination of what I want to bring to the whole timer. Can't do that with only 1 timer. That's problem 1. Problem 2 is the fact that they also removed the damage cap on the shields. It was pointed out by Ashy that, like, a band of a few marauders can take out the entire shields of a Astrahus in like 2 minutes flat or something like that. Like, it's ridiculous. In and out. And so the problem with that is if the shields are too easy to strip, then it's very likely that a roaming group is just going to knock out every fucking shield that they find looking for good timers. And if you just happen to be one of those, then guess what? You're the one being evicted right now. But there's no reason to not do that, because there's no extra commitment past that first timer. You just get to see whether or not you want to come back when the timer is up. Then the third thing is the cost, right? It's okay for it to be modeled off of POSs, but not when they're 3 times as expensive as a large POS. So of those 3, if you could only fix one of the 3, which one do you think is the most important to fix? Bring back a 3rd timer, somehow make the shield reinforcement a bit more of a bitch, or lower the prices, like say for instance, as I've suggested, removing cores from medium structures, so that way that cuts its price by half right there. Which of those three would you recommend?
I think the third one would be a. It does sound good, but I don't think this. I think we would end up with medium structure spam again if you lower the cost. That could be a thing. Of course, this change is against medium structure spam, which isn't really that much of a problem in Wormhole space. But yeah, I don't think that's gonna be the thing. Most people, yeah.
With them dying more often, wouldn't it be more like structure boil? You know, like more are coming into existence and more are being destroyed.
Yeah, it's more of the forward operating base that we were once promised.
That's true, which they've actually hinted that we might be getting in the next year or two.
Tune everything, yeah. No, I think the first part is is really more important for newbies, with everything being on the line after the shield has been breached. Which usually means in Wormhole space, just unless you're in the time zone, you can't really defend against that. You usually don't have the people out at the time, or someone can actually just look when is your uptime, when are people there, and then strike. So that usually doesn't get defended.
Let's just assume that the shield timer is a non timer, right? Most people don't get there in time. Most people don't defend it.
Yeah. Then you have the one structure timer, and then that means full out call to arms for everyone in the corp.
Right.
Maybe having to cancel social events. I don't know, just having the time to save roll everything, to be there the whole time to see, does he have... did they just roam through the hole and bash the shield of 10 structures? Or did they actually have some rollers in here? Do they have some scouts in here? Are they trying to evict us? Really, is this a non-issue? Is this an issue? That's quite of a thing that people can do with very few time. And I don't think that's really helpful for people coming into Wormhole space. Like if you're a veteran, if you played longer, you know that's the case. That's something you accept. But if imagine you come into Wormhole space and on the second day someone blows your shield timer, and you're being told that in 2 days you have to be there, probably also be ready the whole time in case we have to roll something, and if we don't manage to do that, everything's gone.
Yep.
Yeah, I can live with it, but I don't think for most groups that's a healthy start into Wormhole space.
It's true. There's also another piece to this, which I feel remiss if I leave out, which is the fact that structures are far more discoverable than posses. They're easier to find. Once they're found, they're easier to warp to. They are also, posses can be auto-defended. Posses can be dick stars, which make them a giant pain in the butt to reinforce. That goes back to that shield timer, right? There are things that you can do that make it so that even if somebody finds your posse, they're like, nah, it's not fucking worth it. But with a structure, it's juicy from go. So there is a big piece of that. It does feel like the commitment by the attacker has been significantly reduced, while the commitment by the defender remains the same, if not increases, because of this change. But we could probably talk about this all day, and if you want to, we can circle back later. But I also want to jump in on the other thing that you mentioned earlier, which is frig holes. What's the problem with frig holes?
It's a hugely discussed thing, as frig holes seem to always show up when there's a timer in a wormhole. I'm not sure if that's just a bias from some people.
Y'all need to pray to Bob better.
Yeah. I've asked CCP about where they have the flip chart of frig holes they have to put into the game whenever there's a timer. Maybe someone coded it into the game.
That's some awesome fucking paranoia right there. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, it actually, I think there was even something official from CCP that they increased the roaming nullsec frig holes from wormholes.
Yep, roaming connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially nullsec and wormholes, because that meant that you had this these hit attacks. Okay, let's go out, let's take some frigs, and let's harass these nullsec people, and they can't really do anything unless they also bring frigs into our hole. where they probably then have prepared for that.
Right.
And I
Well,
think that yeah.
so famously, years back, or a few years back, when Pandemic Legion, I think, was using uh, Fui. I can't remember the name of their whole program, but they like mapped out the wormholes every single day. This was right after Phoebe jump changes. They transitioned to mapping out wormhole connections, so that way they could attack all over the place whenever they needed to. So then I think it was Scion, but like from the basically the accusation was the Imperium lobbied CCP to reduce the number of wormhole connections to nullsec, which was successful. This is one of the biggest things that gets highlighted by people as like the CSM having too much power and being able to just like, you know, make changes for their own benefit or whatever. But yeah, you're right. As part of this whole like scarcity revamp, fixing the sins of the past kind of things, they increased the number of frig wormholes to nullsec to kind of bring it back to balance, but not as the same as it was before. But you're saying that wormhole. So you're saying that frig holes make things too exposed.
The main thing about trick holes is that you can't roll them anymore. There
Right.
was an exploit where you could use a prop mod and jump through them, but that would mean you were jumping with more mass than you were usually allowed to.
Right.
But the thing is that first you would check for the mass your ship has, then you would jump through, but the way that the mass for the thing that was calculated for going through the hole actually was the one with the micro warp drive. So then you could still roll the holes. Then someone read it out, and now we can't do that anymore. Which basically means if there's an eviction, you can't close a wormhole. There are some things you can do against them, but if someone actually wants to bring people in, they can still do that.
Right. So it used to be that when you go and jump a wormhole, it would check to see if you had enough mass to jump through the wormhole. If you do have enough mass, or if you were low enough, then you would
Low enough, yeah.
You would execute the jump. At the end of the jump, it would take your mass and subtract it from the mass of the wormhole. So it checks at the beginning, but it does the subtraction at the end. So if you activated your micro warp drive during that time, you could balloon your signature, balloon your mass halfway through. You could get through with a ship that couldn't normally make it through, blow it up, and tear out a whole chunk of mass that you wouldn't normally be able to take out. That was what got fixed. Meanwhile, they also greatly increased the amount of mass it took to actually roll a wormhole, to the point where rolling a frigate wormhole is basically not something that's going to happen. This has made frigate wormholes way, way, way more chaotic. And CCP did talk about this in 2019, how they thought that wormholes were too in control of their wormholes, and that the process of rolling wormholes was both too powerful and too fiddly. So the increase of roaming wormholes and the more uncontrollable nature of frigate wormholes seems to have been their solution. You know, I've definitely seen times where like people will want to dread rat or you know, run sites in dreads or run sites in marauders, and you can you can stop all of the wormholes. You can do all the stuff to lock down your system, and then you get like halfway through one site and a frigate wormhole opens and you're done for the night. Right? Like you're not doing any of your dangerous stuff with a frigate wormhole going, and you're not closing the frigate wormhole. Your new job is to monitor a frigate wormhole for the rest of the night. Do you think that that's a better solution, or are you suggesting that that's a huge problem? Should wormholes be controllable by the people that are inside of it?
I mean, there we come to the part about changing something that has been expected up to now. I guess it's very important during evictions for how this whole thing works, that you can control it. And I mean, with how filaments were removed, we do have one of the pain points that has to do with trick holes also removed, as it was used to basically have asset safety. There's still the pain point of trick holes during evictions, where you can, if you have the ships to hand out to people, which obviously you needed to prepare, you can just bring in then. But you could then just have suddenly 200 people in your hull, and unless they were coming, and unless someone actually took a little bit of effort to defend the frig hull, you could still get some ships which would get through. But you could basically just bring in a lot of people, have a lot of pilots, which is very important. Also bring back in pilots that were shot out of the wormhole.
Right.
And
yeah,
those are up for some time. I think 16 hours is it? Has been some time since I checked.
I've always considered the ability to get people in, like if you've got ships cached, ready to go inside of the wormhole, bringing the people in shuttles and stuff like that. I've always seen that as kind of like playing counterplay, right? Like if it's just, do you have people in the wormhole? Yes, no. Do they have hull control? Yes, no. And that's the end of the conversation. I feel like that just kind of, ends the conversation really quickly. But like, I could try to get people in with shuttles and they can see us doing that and they can get ready for something and they can smart bomb. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like giving people more options always to be able to do the next thing feels like it makes a much more interesting time period rather than, oh, did they have hull control? I guess we see you in 2 days then. You know, like what? Do you really think that it's a problem that people can still bring people in under hull control but not ships?
I'm not completely against it, but the thing is that you as a player, you're not really like, you don't know if a frickle is going to show up, and if it does, it's going to change the whole eviction because everyone can bring in people without any effort. And usually, the way you would bring in people is the same way. You would have handout ships. You would make sure that you hold control long enough to get them in, and it's quite an effort and takes skill to be the faster roller on the defender side or on the people not wanting to bring in people side, and a lot of effort to be ready to go somewhere from the attacker side or the other side that wants to bring people in. And this is basically then taken away by the existence of a frickle because you can't really do that much against it. So this whole thing is just oh no, that doesn't matter. You don't need to roll, you don't need to scan, you don't need to bring people in, be in a hurry, have people ready to go at the second where a wormhole is up, rush from the Thera or something, and then get into, then be finally able to defend it. No, frickle, just get in, use the shuttle, go to nullsec, get in, you're done. I think that is the part where people are really unhappy with it. Not the fact that it's possible, because it still is, just with enough effort.
But isn't complaining about something happening randomly based on the nature of wormholes blasphemy against Bob? Like, aren't you supposed to embrace the chaos? Bob giveth and Bob taketh away, right? If a frig hole opens in the middle of your eviction, how dare you question the will of Bob? Just all right. So, no, let's. I mean, it's an interesting thought process, and it is a difficult problem. And as we can just tell by this conversation, it isn't one of those things that gets fixed by some campaign slogan. It's not like remove filaments from wormholes, which is a very straightforward thing to send to CCP. This is something where the wormhole person, you or whoever else, is going to have to sit down with CCP, with the wormholers, and be like, what really is going on? Because this, these are the sorts of things that, as I showed, like there's two sides to every story, right? So being able to sort that out is really good. And the fact that you're able to talk about this and not be super reactionary about it and like address the issues and kind of work our way through the puzzle is a really good sign for your ability to advocate and function as a bridge and for the wormhole community to CCP. So that said,
you're not gonna get far on CSM just screaming remove that, and
some people try. Now, you've got a couple of other things. I want to actually jump on the smuggler thing real quick, mostly because CCP has transitioned to this new arc system for stories. And this current arc, the first arc, seems to be surrounding this new smuggler empire ran by the Deathless between Caldari criminal organizations and Thucker renegade clans. So smuggling, we also just got the Boo Book, which is a new smuggling shuttle, which has very little use.
I have an opinion on that.
Yeah, okay, great. Let's start. Well, I guess, what's your opinion on the Boo Book? What's your opinion on smuggling? Why is it in your fucking header.
Yeah, so the smuggling is basically why it's in my header right now, why it's still relevant, even though the smuggling mechanic is mostly irrelevant right now in Eve, is that I just enjoy getting stuff through the chain, being cloaked and everything, or just making sure that I get something through nullsec to a chain, and I just like that stuff. And that was part of the old. I have this order of boosters, and I want to get it to you in this nullsec system where you ordered it to. And I'm gonna choose the ship to get it there. Gonna be able to have to evade everything, and dodge bubbles and everything on the way. Dodge also gate cams. So it could be different things you have to check out from there. And I really did enjoy that way of playing. Now it's a little bit reduced, but that's something I would love to see back in some degree. I don't want to. I understand why it was mostly removed, because it wasn't the most complicated or well thought out mechanic in Eve.
I think it was more that it was suppressing the use of boosters, and like
that definitely, yeah.
They wanted people to be able to play with those tools a little bit more. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is that, like, not really interesting. That's overselling it by a few magnitudes. But so one of the very earliest mechanics in the game for making money is commodity trade.
Yeah.
And every once in a while I run into a new bro that has stumbled upon this and thinks that it's like a thing to do and are still doing it, right? Like you can buy a commodity in one area of space, take it to another area of space and sell it for more, right? These are NPC buy orders and sell orders for the most part. And some of those commodities are illegal, right? In fact, actually, one of the things I've noticed is that in most of the previous events recently, there's been at least one item that has dropped that has been illegal somewhere. Either small arms or protein delicacies or something like that. Which, why protein delicacies are illegal, that's a story for another episode. But the point is that at first I thought it was a mistake. Right? Oh my God, they're just using these novelty items, not realizing that there's some sort of illegality to them. But now that we have the smugglers starting to show up, now that we have the Boo Book, it's starting to make me wonder whether or not they're going to circle back on this concept, whether or not the idea of an illegal commodity trade, where bringing things from somewhere where it's legal to somewhere where it's illegal might be a good way to make money. Maybe there's going to be new missions that involve this, where you actually have to bring something to somebody where it's illegal in the territory that they live in. Let's talk about the Boo Book. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I don't think much about it because technically it's not better at smuggling, at evading the not comms officer, at evading
customs
the NPCs than custom officer. Thanks. Yeah, it's not better at that than any other shuttle. Like it has, because the not being scannable, the NPCs don't care about that. You can use any ship that has a covered ops cloak and be basically safe. The best thing to do it is to have an Astero and have both insta warp and the covered ops cloak. And yeah, if you're gonna use a bow book, it's gonna work. That's not it, because you're insta warp. If something gets wrong, you would be safer in a covered ops cloak. And yeah, I mean, if you choose to use it, I don't think you're safer, because people see, oh, that's a shuttle, I can pretty quickly kill that. And also, he doesn't want to be scanned, so there might be something inside that I want to have. So yeah, it's more of a joke thing than an actual useful item, in my opinion.
I definitely agree that it is not practically useful at the exact moment. I mean, like, it just has too small of a cargo bay for what it does. And, you know, shuttles can have sub 2 second align time anyways. Like, really, it's like, well, it's a shuttle that's difficult to combat probe. How many places does that come in? So if you want to run around in a shuttle in Pochvin and sit in safes without cloaking, well, the Boo Book is there for you, my friend. Yeah. Like, it's like, but it's the kind of thing where it's like, I don't know if it's a novelty item that's just designed to be thematic to what's going on without worrying about whether or not it's too powerful? Or is it a hint to things to come, right? Like with this whole smuggler thing. So, but you're suggesting that they should explore the idea of smuggling and illegal goods again. Is that correct?
I think it's going to take a lot of effort. Yes, I do. But I think it's also going to take a lot of effort to come up with a good system. Because you can make it way too complicated, you can make it way too easy, you can make it just not really relevant at all. The win or lose mechanic of how it's currently is kind of hard, but I mean, you're able to go around that. That's not the problem. I've talked to some of the devs at FanFest about the book and everything, and they said it was a novelty item.
Right.
But on
they've
the
said
other
a lot
hand,
of shit in the past.
Well, not I wasn't talking about on stage, but talking.
Well, no, what I mean by that is like they've said that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a novelty item now. But yes, go on.
Could be, yeah. Nonetheless, I do like it that there's a little bit more focus on that. That there are the previously illegal items, like I think I ran one of the event sites and I got some exile from it. That stuff drops. Maybe it shows that there's interest within CCP to do something in that direction. That may become actually part of this arc because we don't know what's going to come.
Right.
And
would you be in favor of strong boosters being illegal, but like because it used to be synth were the only ones illegal? What if only the strongest boosters were illegal?
I mean, that would be a way to cut it off.
I think that one of the biggest problems with boosters being illegal has been the fact that it's about the people using it, right? Like, if it's illegal, that means you can't use them in missions. You can't use them in high sec. And with the addition of the boosters from, like, the Halcyon boosters, like, those are so strong that going through other bullshit in order to have, like, strong drop or whatever, it's like, who cares? I've got, B4. Now I'm awesome at everything Caldari.
Right now, I wouldn't see that as something that would make sense because they have all those events and lock-in boosters, and having those exist and the actual boosters you can produce be illegal. That would be a little bit weird. I think that I'm not really sure. You already have some kind of illegality as you can't produce boosters or you can't react the boosters in high sec space, so it's already kind of.
That's
moved to low sec, null sec, and wormhole space. But I think you would really have to sit down and with CCP and see if they have any ideas to get that in, see whether it would make sense. Of course, trying to kind of get around the problem of people then not really being able to buy their things and transport them, because previously the way we would buy boosters was basically for this fleet, I want that much boosters.
Right.
To then start from low sec and go roaming anywhere I want. And then you would buy from As and Wiz and get the delivery and then start. You could also just smuggle it yourself, but not that many people were doing it as they weren't that knowledgeable about it and just didn't want to risk it.
So you just touched on a point that I definitely want to zero in on. But I would say that, like, if they are going to do this does seem like the kind of thing that they would do with the Allegiance system. Like I said, new missions or quests or things that one place might want that is illegal in a different place and therefore kind of creates conflict between there. However, what you just dialed in on is actually, in my opinion, the biggest piece to the booster system that used to exist that we have lost, right? Not the fact that you can, not bring it into high sec, not the fact that you can get it taken by customs agents, but the mere fact that it was illegal and therefore couldn't be sold on the standard markets, couldn't be sold through the standard processes. It wasn't just about booster production. It was about becoming a drug lord, right? It was about connections. It was about maintaining clients. It was about, taking on orders, right? These people need so much of this stuff, being somebody's drug dealer. I think that was a big piece to boosters that was just completely lost with the removal of the smuggling system.
definitely. But just one thing, you were always able to sell boosters in Jita. It's
That's
just
true, but like,
that
but the point was is that like you would have to smuggle it into Jita, and then
yep,
they would have to smuggle it out. So for the most part, people would
it didn't
just
make sense to do
make
that. Yeah.
outward arrangements, external arrangements to the market.
Mm, mm.
I remember
I
this
mean,
because my buddy was able to manufacture drugs. He was good at. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. He was able to make a bunch
no
of drugs, but he like moving it was the problem.
mm. It was always a risk if you had a disconnect or something. If you didn't manage to clock up in time or something, were AFK at the wrong moment, you would have lost quite a lot of ISK.
Right. Okay. I guess. Well, I mean that's kind of the booster stuff too. Is there anything else involving boosters besides just the illegality of it that we want to touch on?
I mean, it's not really about the boosters itself, but a lot of one thing I like to focus on is gas harvesting.
Right.
And now that we have the industry changes, it's not just about the boosters anymore. It's also about capitals. It's also about battleships. It's about faction ships and everything. Yeah, there's the there's my spreadsheet about it, and there I've compared all the changes that were made to gas harvesting ships. At the start, when we first got the change on Sisi, it looked quite bad because the Gnosis was basically the best ship to harvest still, as the Prospect and Venture were nerfed for some reason. That was fixed pretty soon, and we actually got some quite nice changes so that you can now, instead of a Prospect being safer, maybe if you get blingy with the faction scoops, actually be faster than before. You can use a Coveter or a Hulk to actually really fast half gas, which I think is really good because it means you can do more than just more prospects. And also kind of now makes sense to have with this amount of gas you can harvest at a single time. It kind of makes sense to use a porpoise. Now that it can be sieged, it can or activate the industrial core. It also gives you much more of a boost. And I myself, I mean, if you go onto the, I think the second tab in the spreadsheet, there's a comparison about,
Gnosis and Porpoise.
yeah,
Yeah.
which one makes more sense to use. And actually, if you check the unboosted row in the column, sorry, you see that it doesn't really make sense to use a porpoise if you could just use an extra coveter. Like
Well, is
you
that
would
fair?
need.
Like the Porpoise is the booster. Wouldn't
It
you
is
assume boosting?
well. I could if I have two pilots and both could be in a coveter. I'm definitely not gonna put one of those in a porpoise instead
I
because I
see.
think
Even though the
it's.
Porpoise will also improve the other cover. I wonder how many coverters you would need to make it so that the next one being a Porpoise would be the smarter move.
Let me check. I think.
Wait, the best booster is the Gnosis?
Yeah. So this calculation here is which of the because the Gnosis can boost unbonused,
Yes.
but also half itself. So this is the calculation on when does it actually make sense to bring a Gnosis or a Porpoise.
You have
And
to have
yeah,
11 prospects before it's valuable to bring a Porpoise? Holy crap. That's a lot.
yeah,
That's a lot of them. And that's
yeah. I
just the
mean the
difference
Gnosis.
between the no. So that the only difference between the two is the bonus that the Porpoise has versus the Gnosis. What about the extra cargo bay or the fact that you can't compress gas with the Porpoise, right? Wait, can
Yeah.
you?
Not
Hold on, which one is it?
the Porpoise can compress gas.
Oh
Yes,
yeah, well then there you
and
go. So
can
like,
do.
isn't that an advantage over the Gnosis?
It definitely is. Like the Gnosis isn't the first choice anymore, but also depending on what you're doing, you're probably gonna be in the space itself. You can dock somewhere. It's not gonna be that important all the time. It does have some bonuses, but just the fact that the Gnosis can huff itself just really makes it a good booster either way. And sure, you have less cargo bay, but also depending on where you don't have to have that much. Like if you go day tripping, definitely bring a porpoise. That makes total sense. But unless you're gonna you have a 4-man fleet, I myself wouldn't. With 3 people, I would still bring 3 covetors, because that's still a lot of room we can fill up.
Huh. Crazy. So, okay, but these are pretty numbers. What's the problem?
In my opinion, the porpoise should just get a gas harvesting drone. That is not really good. That is maybe not even as good as the Gnosis itself. But it should have some way to do anything but being cored, compressing, and giving boosts.
But wouldn't one argue that that's the porpoise's job? I think that one of the issues that we've run into is that there is 2 different types of lines. There's the resource extraction ships, and then there's the command ships, right? Like there's the exhumers and the mining barges, and then there's the porpoise, orca, and rorqual. And one of the things that we've kind of lost sight of is the fact that we think that those boosting ships should also be mining ships, which kind of leads to question why you would bring the mining ships in a lot of those cases, which is how we got the reign of the rorqual to begin with. So with that in mind, what's the problem with the porpoise having its purpose, the purpose of the porpoise? I always love saying that. Versus having other ships be able to do their thing.
Now with the addition of gas compression, the porpoise has finally its place. It has some sense to be used, definitely, but I still think that porpoise sitting there doing nothing at all is kind of boring. If you're actually gonna put one pilot in there who's gonna want to do something with his friends, he's gonna just sit there. I mean, he's gonna talk with people. I don't know how he can stay sane while mining without doing something besides that. But still,
what are the mining ships doing besides just sitting there? I mean, like, it's not like mining in a barge is overly engaging APM in the first place, right? Isn't everybody just kind of sitting around doing nothing?
But you have some numbers going up and pretty
well, that's okay. It's fair. The porpoise just has numbers going down. I get you.
Yeah.
No, that's a interesting point. But so, like, the idea of a gas huffing drone, how would you give a gas huffing drone to the porpoise without giving it to the Gnosis, without giving it to the other mining ships? If there was a gas huffing drone, wouldn't any ship be able to use it?
I think either you could give the bonus to it so that it would only make really sense to use it with them. Let me really check. I think the ice harvesting drone can only be used by orcas and porpoises. Not really sure about that right now.
That'd be a solid
I think
argument.
It was exclusive. Because I always wanted to base it on them. Okay, I'm not really sure if I can find that quick.
Yeah. So I am getting kind of low on my time, though. So if there's anything else that you want to touch on while I look up the ice harvester drone thing, we can start chatting about whatever you want.
Let me think if we skipped over anything.
You got the Setonia endorsement there.
Well, it's just you have to be kind of realistically about what you can do on the CSM and how much fun it's actually going to be and how much people are going to love you for doing the job, which I'm not really sure is really the case. But yeah. Anyway, one thing I'd like to talk about is one thing that I wanted to also connect with gas harvesting, and something I think that's kind of missing. Also has to do with forward operating bases. It's just something where you have, especially for wormholes, a kind of escalation before the full eviction. Being able to have some kind of goal where you can destroy something of a group, and then have that destroyed, and not the whole group being completely busted, not everything, not all the structures away, not the whole, in case of wormholes, the whole assets being dropped. And I think some way that was actually promised, I think, at some point for nullsec, to have some system to choose what resources show up in your SOF.
Correct. That was something that was hinted at right as we transitioned out of prosperity or out of scarcity.
Scarcity.
As controversial as that statement is, one of the things that they said was that they were going to make a change to nullsec that allowed you to better control what resources or how your space worked.
Don't you feel prosperous?
Say again?
Don't you feel prosperous? Didn't it hit you?
So it's that's actually one of my questions, which I can get into in a second. But what I feel about it doesn't matter. But the ice harvesting drone takes 50 megabits per second bandwidth, which means that the coveter could use 1.
Yeah.
But also the porpoise has the same bandwidth as a coveter. So it would need to have its bandwidth increased. Or it would have to be given like a bonus to allow it to use the ice harvesters, probably.
Yeah. Previously, I think the ice harvesting drone was locked due to the bandwidth restriction, but
yeah,
I'm not that sure.
50 meter, 50 M3 bandwidth really does imply that they don't want you to use it for a lot of ships.
Yeah, but I mean, you could still make it so that
it's the same as the Orca. Orca also only has 50 megabits per second.
The Orca also can use only one ice harvesting drone, but of course the Orca and porpoise have the bonuses to the ice harvesting drone.
Yep.
Which
25%. Yep. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Sorry, that was a good one.
Yeah. No problem.
But yeah, let's circle back on that question then. I'm going to ask you: is scarcity over?
They should never have said that. They never acknowledge scarcity, never say scarcity is over, never say we now have prosperity, because that is an expectation that people have. Some of the people's expectation might be that it means we get back into the Rockwool days where we can print ships as we want, and I don't think that's a good thing to even happen. And we're not going to be in the same prosperity we were before scarcity. And just taking this into an official announcement and saying, yeah, this scarcity is over, in itself might not be not that bad, but just I'm not sure I would have done that this way. And I feel prosperous because I do my industry quite nice, and people have quite the thirst for crash boosters. But yeah, I don't think many people find themselves that much more prosperous than before the update.
Yeah, I would argue, or I would say that we definitely aren't like in prosperity yet. But would you say that scarcity is over at the very least? Yes or no?
I'd say no.
What would it take for scarcity to be over, in your eyes?
I mean, if you look at for example, the capital production, you have a lot of gas now being used for that, and the gas with the most volume being used is also the most scarce gas, which actually, from a gameplay design point, isn't that bad, because you don't want people to. The Microsaracen is which was added to nullsec as kind of semi-random spawns, and is previously only for synth used in lowsec, which also means it doesn't have that much spawns.
Well, they're racially locked.
They're in special regions and constellations.
Each race has 2 different varieties, I believe, that are both required. No, like each race has 2 different kinds of the stuff. Like,
For building a cap, you have per race the 2 versions of Microsaracen.
Yep.
Yeah, but anyway, the thing that you need, this means that this is definitely a limit on production, and this is a designed limit on production, I think, or at least I hope that they didn't do it by accident. And I think something like that really shows that we're still in this process where the way that CCP explained it, they want to get rid of all the stockpiles, whatever we have stockpiled. I don't know, they didn't tell us with the graph that they showed. But I think we're still in the phase where they want to get rid of that and still get into a normal way that everything's set up.
I also think that they hope that people will, over time, become ambitious, and we'll get like more people dipping in, because like we end up running into a lot of people who are, you know, into mining, but they don't necessarily want to join a null block or something like that, and they want to know how they can easily like step up to the next level, especially if they're still like in a venture or something like that. And so the idea that they can go into low sec and ninja huff some gas ends up being like, that's the high risk, high reward for those kinds of pilots. The same with like mining rocks that give you isogen, right? It seems very clear that CCP is fixing the problem by putting a giant prize in low sec and being like, it's not that scary to go do it. You might as well try. Do you think that that's going to work out, or a good idea?
I think that kind of works out in nullsec, where you have the way less needed cytoceracin gas, where they have the constellations because the cytoceracin is still completely region locked, with the most or basically constant spawns of cytoceracin in special constellations. And there you have, of course, with soft null, you have people taking the space over, and as you can see in the MER, you definitely have people taking that over and selling that stuff, getting all the gas out of there. For lowsec, it's kind of different because you don't have the soft mechanics. You don't. Some of the regions where the hotspots are actually in faction warfare space. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of clashes with each other. Like I totally love the mechanic of, if you get the space, you can get really much out of it. You have to use some industry, but put some barges in there, protect them. They're gonna give you a lot of money. You can even do some booster producing yourself, or you could just compress it and send it to Jita.
Yeah, as a faction warfare pilot, I would say that like this has actually been not a godsend, but this is a big thing for us. Is that like we've had more and more of our pilots living off of the land, making money, doing things like gas huffing, doing things like mining a random anom or like a belt that spawns in our home system or something like that. Like, it just opens up the field of things that we can do to make money while we live in low sec.
I mean, yeah, I don't, the fighting part with faction warfare, if that really works with docking and everything, and not being worked around with citadels and everything, that would be also great. But it's just that the way I know how to industrialize gas harvesting was to, at least in case space, that is, was to set up in soft null and really be controlling of those spawns.
Right.
And yeah.
Well, especially since that's where a lot of the drugs for the boosters come from.
Yeah.
Anywho, I'm running low on time, so I guess I will finish with the most important question, of course. I feel like asking it is just slightly redundant in this case. So I guess what I'll ask is, who is your fashion designer and why is it Yinton?
Yes, the caddies are definitely inspired by Jintan and Eshi. The suit I found due to some singer of a drinking song in Germany. But yeah, the caddies question. You can get very serious with it. You can also get very non-serious with it.
Sure.
The thing I want to advocate is to just put it into the game, put it on pilots, put it into the profile pictures. You don't have to look at them. I mean, most people don't actually do that. You're going to look at it yourself, you're going to see caddies, and you're going to be happy. Where I can definitely see why people would draw a line is putting them on ships, like having the avatar with big cat ears and maybe a Hello Kitty skin. That's going to rub some people the wrong way. I think there are definitely in-game design ways to have it optional to see some stuff like this, like having a flag. Oh no, this is weep stuff. And then in your options have the default settings to not show weep stuff on other ships. And
right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I would argue that there's already a lot of things in portraits that, I would prefer people to not be able to do. Like, if I had ultimate control. So, like, I'd let people do what they want with their portraits. And then if you don't like it, I guess you can target them and shoot them. All right, cool. Well, anything else just before we wrap it up?
Turbo is recruiting. That would be it.
All right. Sounds good. Well, you showed up last year. You did a great job last year. You've come back again. You've showed both commitment and a continued understanding to the problems and the lifestyles of relatively niche groups that do require a lot of attention. I think that it would be wise for people to vote you onto the CSM as you would make a good voice on that. And if not, I think that it would behoove CCP to reach out to you and talk to you, because your voice, you've got things to say. And over the course of the last year, we're now able to see that, you've got some good consistency. You're here for it. One last question. What was the moment? Was there a moment this year that was like your one big, God dang it, I wish I had gotten elected this. If I had been elected, I wanted to be there for this. I wanted to have been elected. Well, do you have that moment?
I think would have very much liked to be on CSM during the booster the gas changes and be in the discussion with that.
The compression changes and stuff?
Yeah, and everything. But I think as I kind of helped Kenneth also later, and although he's updating my gas harvesting spreadsheet, I was kind of able to help with that. And also, I think just being on CSM, it's not funny. It's quite a lot of work. I would have liked to be on CSM, but also not being on CSM is quite a lot less work I have to do. So it's like I was constantly, oh man, I want to be in another meeting with CCP right now.
You heard it here first, folks. If you don't like his outfit, if you want to torture him, elect him to the CSM, so that way he has to do extra work. That's the best thing that you can do. Yeah. Rousing endorsement. Well, thank you so much for coming by once again. I do wish you the best of luck in your candidacy. You're always a good person to chat with, and you're always welcome on the show, of course.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me.
And thank you guys all for coming and checking this out. If you're on the YouTubes, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe before you go. If you haven't already, leave any questions for Vincent here in the chat below, or in the forums and stuff, which the links should be down in the doobly-doo down below. But, if you're watching this on the playlist, you can just hang tight and it'll just go on to the next video. And we can all you can watch them all and become well informed, because that's what the whole point of all of this is. It's why I'm putting all of these hours. It's why all these guys are coming to show up, is not just to get them elected, but also to make sure that you as an electorate are the most informed that you can be, because an informed electorate makes an effective CSM, and an effective CSM helps us all, especially during this incredibly critical time for EVE Online and CCP. So once again, thank you so much, Vincent, for being willing to come by and talk and put in all of this effort for 2 years, and continue to want to support us and support EVE and support, wormholers and such. So without further ado, on behalf of Vincent and myself, I have been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, I'll see you in space.